we need to ask ourselves a better question than how do I sleep better? Because we know how we can do it, what kind of routine and rituals we need to have, how we can activate some neurological features and things during our days that will amplify our sleep pattern. But what if I told you that your sleep also can be a very, very hard contributor from your lack of identity and the life you have built around yourself that makes your identity feel unsafe? This is what we see in high performers all day long. So perhaps we need to ask ourselves a better question than just how do I sleep better, and ask yourself instead, what kind of life have I built around myself that make my identity and furthermore my sleep feeling unsafe for my nervous system. So you are exhausted because when your biology is at war with your own identity, that means that you do not have a sleep problem per se, but you have a gap between what your biology really wants, what your values are, what your needs are, what your beliefs are, and that you're living aligning with that, and the gap with the actual work itself. So this means that you feel exhausted even though you think that you recover well, you feel ambitious and you feel disciplined, so you're doing a lot of stuff and you're still sleeping the hours, but you really ain't having the energy in order for you to thrive. So athletes feeling that recovery is equals guilt or making them feeling behind. You have the executives that is waking up in the middle of the night thinking about stuff at work. You have parents that feels physically exhausted and mentally drained. And the problem today with today's society is that people wear this kind of exhaustion or lack of recovery or semi-burnout as a badge, almost bragging about sleeping 4 hours or cannot really recover. Working a lot is used as a badge of honor more so than any other thing. So this is obviously a big problem in society as a whole. So the problem with that is that if a big group of people is doing that, we also have the social component of it. It's okay to do that. Nobody is stopping that process. We are living in a time where sleep deprivation is a really common thing, and furthermore in high achievers and peak performers. The problem is that it will destroy your biology over time. So everything we know about peaking and performance, from everything about executive functions to making decisions, to have focus, to be very clear, to have new ideas, to have a memory consolidation, and to have motor pattern that is working for the training or the physical training you're doing, or if you want the brain to really have a good memory in terms of learning new skills and skill acquisition. In pretty much every domain or every field in peak performance we look at, we can always reverse engineer that to the sleep pattern of that person. So if you have a sleep problem, you have a performance problem. That is a fact. That is why it's so crucial to begin and start with the sleep by itself, because it will make a huge difference. In peak performance, we do not see sleep or recovery as some sort of laid back or pushback or anything like that. We see it as the peak performance itself. So I would say that it at least makes your 50% of your peak performance over time by far. So it's well worth noting it. So in this video, I'm gonna teach you how you can align your biology and your identity with your values and beliefs together so that your nervous system can sleep and feel safe during night. And when you do so, you will also entering the REM sleep and all the good benefits of the sleep way better. And so you do not have to take all the supplements and all the routines and rituals that you will need to take if your nervous system is unsafe and is stressed out. So it's way more bigger. That's why we begin with the identity, because it's so fundamental and profound for your nervous system to really live by your own values and truths fully in order for you to sleep better. That is also true when it comes to the gut biome and your ability to actually receive the nutrients in your food you're eating. You receive your social capital with people you are in relationships with as well. So it's transferred over to so many things, and we have forgotten sometimes that it's more of a biological problem, and we try to solve that with the symptoms out of it. And of course we are very good at that, because that means also that a lot of companies are making money for that. Check this video out if you really want to sleep better and you really want to work with yourself from the inside and out, instead of just having to go backwards and trying to fix the symptoms out of it. So today I want to show you how peak performers can sleep more deeply, how you can implement this in your life, how your mattress and your caffeine and your magnesium and all that is not the main issue for most people, and why also it's so important that you have a system that is based on your identity so that you can sleep better. And finally, I'm gonna show you how to do it, and so you can implement it today so you can have the beneficial effects of it as soon as possible. One of the most dangerous sentences in the high performance world is that I'll sleep when I earned it. So the problem with that is that if you feel or see your sleep as something you deserve and that you have to earn that, that itself means that it's so stressful for your biology, so it's very hard for you to actually get the sleep itself. So because the moment your nervous system feels that recovery must be earned, your body stops feeling safe enough to recover at all. If you think about that deeply, what do I mean with it's very connected to how and why your body just have a need naturally in order for you to sleep? Well, the problem with that is, as I mentioned in the beginning, your identity most of the time in this world. That's what I see with high performance in a way. What I mean by that is value is really linked to your result or to the outcome. That is when it becomes very stressful, because then the outside world will decide when you don't have to feel safe or unsafe. So it's a really thin system to live by. If you feel that for example, your achievement has to do with your self-value, and if you do not achieve things, you don't really know who you are, that's a really big drive in this. So when your worth is coming from your achievements, your safety is coming from staying ahead of people. So most performers struggle with recovery or sleep because the identity is fused or have become fused with the output. And your nervous system have learned to connect your achievement with your value. Your worth comes from your achievement, and your safety comes from staying ahead, and your value is coming from your sense of being needed, right? So in broad terms, these values and achievements and your truth is very good because it's human needs, right? We need to feel that. So we need to accomplish things, but it's the source that is way more result-based and output-based and has to do with your external motivation. That is not good for the nervous system itself, because your external environment then have the capacity and the power to actually regulate your capacity to or ability to get into deep sleep. And that is not okay. That is not peak performance. Peak performance is when you're taking control over your achievements for the right reason, your values for the right reason, and why you're doing things for the right meaning, right? And so that you can be needed in the context that you want to be needed for. So when the world is quieting down or getting more silent prior to sleep, for one example, but also in recovery as a whole, many performers feel unsafe or they feel exposure. They do not like silence because it's a threat for them. And that is when you know where your nervous system really have been learning the wrong stuff, and your biology is taking a hit, and a change is needed. So this is why many performers still can thrive during the day, so they can perform, and you can perform by fear, right? But your nervous system and your health is taking a hit on that. So you can see them as successful, but when you talk to them, and for me, when I coach them, they express anxiety, they express exhaustion, they express that they are tired and do not have energy, and so on and so forth. So recovery have become a threat. They cannot trust the process or the system itself and their biology anymore. So they are totally reliant on a fear-based nervous system, which is the one we really need to get out of if we're talking about sustainable performance. If you cannot regulate yourself, because it's what it's all about, you need to have the ability and the capacity to have a system that regulates your biology, so you can perform when you are on and you can also recover when you're off. So that is basically it. So it's very straightforward there. But if you cannot regulate during the night, you don't see that, right? You don't see that on social media, you don't see that on TV, you don't see that, because when a performer is performing, they're putting up a show and don't really show that their biology is off. Instead of just being in surviving mode, you kind of running on a treadmill, and you kind of running, but really don't excel. You don't achieve, you don't excel to the next level. You cannot elevate your state or your company state or your relationship state or whatever state you want to, and have a goal in order for you to change, right? So that's the main issue here, that if you cannot regulate your biology, you will not elevate your domain in the sense where you actually feel that you have the potential, because I know you do, because you see in this video. So, and that's a bummer. So we really need to fix that. So now when we know this and we know why sleep is so important, and the problem is, let's talk about the biology a little bit for a second. So you have to realize that sleep is the most active brain process that we have, right? So the brain is on fire when we are really, it's processing everything we've done during the day, every sort of simulation, stimulation, and what have you, right? So that is where your recalibration happens, that where your memory consolidates and your learning consolidates. That is also where your dopamine is restored. That is also where your hormone levels stabilizes, your blood sugar stabilizes. That is also where your identity is being processed and handled. That is also a very good important thing that I often talk about, is what we call signal to noise, which also has its process in the most of the sleep, which means that the brain have the ability to actually differentiate between what is signal and what is noise, especially when you are working with yourself as a peak performance tool. You start to be more impactful and you have better attention towards what's good for you and what's not. So those kind of things is also consolidating really, really well and processed during sleep as well. And the opposite of that is obviously that the brain is being really reactive with a lot of noise. You have also bad recovery, of course, bad processing, things getting more blurred. You will make poor decisions because decision making is also consolidating very, very well during sleep. And you have lack of focus, way of getting your identity into your actions so that you can be aligned with who you are in what to do and how you do it, with what people you're doing it with, in what context or environment you want to be in, and so on and so forth. So it has a huge difference. It's almost like you're running on fuel or steam in a car, you know, the last miles kind of thing. And if you talk to a person that have sleep deprivation problem, you will also see that it's a difference. When we talk about these things, complex problem solving, things like that, focus over time. So the duration of focus, very, very important in both business and in elite athletes. It's one of the most important things we have when we are learning new things, the ability to focus. Very, very deep work. We're gonna talk more about that in the motivation modules and lessons. So yeah, it's I can go on and on and on about the benefits and the deprivations or the reactions that the brain is doing when it's sleep deprived. The hard truth is that you will see most people faking peak performance, trying it to look good, but they are really stuck in survival mode. They have a hard time recovery. They do not working from alignment. They are really, really stuck in survival mode. And the most scary part is that the society will applaud this. So it's no one is actually making them or making us or you accountable for fixing this identity problem. So it's kind of process just going on and on and on. And so a very common thing is that people are blaming that they're working too much, but it's rarely the work itself that is the problem. Because when we're looking at farmers and hardworking laborers, and we see that they can work 12, 13, 14 hours a day, and their values and their sleep is really, really good. So it's not the work itself, it's the regulation problem that is creating the deficit of sustainable peak performance. So things like answering SMS and text messages all the time, Slack messages, context switching is a big one where it will deprive your focus and your ability to learn new things. It's cognitive, really, really loading to switch tasks often, to have a meeting about things that it doesn't matter anything, things of that sort. Answering email several times a day. Do not have a prioritization list and a peak performance system that is actually taking care of business itself to actually make time for recovery within your schedule. So things like this will add up to sleep deprivation problem. Of course, in the athlete world, we see this all the time, where we have like an exercise fetish almost in the world right now, where when we ask athletes why they training things and for what reason and what is the intention, we more often than not is getting the answer that they do not really know. They just repeat what the coach is telling them. So a lot of exercises where the signal to noise ratio is very, very high. So they have the same problem there. They are very productive and they're doing stuff, but the development is really, really slow, or even sometimes just decline instead of just going up. So we can see this in all businesses, for example. So the sleep will become shallow and the recovery will feel like fake, and the motivation becomes forced, and also discipline will also feel like it's a survival driven action instead of coming from inside and from a true enlightenment and alignment with your values and beliefs. I do high performers and peak performing people many times have a hard time to shut off, to relax on the weekend, relax on the vacation, to really feel safe when things are slowing down. So we know that a lot of people have sleep deprivation, and we also now know that a lot of it has to do with the disconnection between their biology and their connection and linked to their value and achievements according to their performance or their output in the world, so to speak. And obviously the society and the companies and the people around us, etc., is really, really good to amplifying this, of course. The nervous system itself doesn't really care about goal settings or the achievement itself. It just cares about survival. And if recovery doesn't feel safe, or if you feel like if I lose this, or if I'm being left behind, fear of being alone or rejected or of that sort, or being behind or being left behind in some manner, that is, if you connect that with recovery or sleep, that is a huge problem within the peak performance field. So this is the reason why a lot of people will feel that they have a hard time relax during the vacation. They have a hard time to chill out during the weekend without thinking about work. They feel guilt when they recover or resting, see that as doing nothing when they actually is doing everything. So it's a mind shift here, as you can imagine. You have to do. Performers need a brain and a nervous system that have flexibility. And if you lose that flexibility, many of you probably have some sort of, or have had some sort of addiction, or that you need some sort of stimulation in order for you to get energized. So that is the problem with that. So a lot of peak performers or high performers do need an energy drink or a caffeine or some other sort of dopamine kick in order for them to function. So that is also some sort of sign when the identity of yourself and your output have a big gap there, and you're thriving and trying to strive against your biology by itself. When we talk about this, when you do not need constant activation, so peak performance is not the one that can stress the longest. So a sustainable peak performer is the one that can regulate their actions the best, and they can regulate their biology, their true biology, to the work they're doing, and they can connect the recovery and the sleep to that process. So that is real sustainable performers. Elevated state peak performance regulated system for getting a really, really good sleep coming from identity should be not a surprise by this means now, despite of what we have talked about in this video. So that means that the framework for sustainable sleep and recovery is not treated as a night problem or a sleep problem per se. It's treated as a whole biological system and as a whole human foundational regulation problem. So that is why it's so effectful. So the first thing we need to do is to actually regulate our neurochemicals And I will take dopamine as an example, that if you are running like on a treadmill, so you're running all day long, you're doing stuff, you're training and you're doing work and so on and so forth. A lot of dopamine is being pushed out in the system as anticipation drugs. It is. So it's Slack messages, is your feeling of being on your way, doing things, answering in phone, email, context switching, so on and so forth. So every urgency loop you are putting out, every meeting you're on, every pressure point during the day, all of that is very, very dopamine regulated. And you cannot be on these constant dopamine release or just cognitive decline or burnout almost in 10 hours straight forward and expect that just because the clock is 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. or whenever you're going to sleep, that the body just is going to shut off. So it needs to be a smooth transition there, because neurochemically it's very important for the body to be calmed down and to transform over to the night sleep mode, right? No matter if you do this in a sleep protocol with breathing exercises, yoga nidra, or drinking green tea, whatever, not eating after 6 p.m., not drinking just before bed, and all that, all the sunlight exposure debate that is going on, which is, all that is really, really good. But you need to have the foundational thing going on first. So you need to have some sort of transformation from activity and performance, and you're just is chilling more and more down to the point where sleep should be occurring. So that is why we have the block method, the peak performance block method, where you actually design your biology when you're doing the stuff that is more suitable for your sleep pattern at the right time, when you have the most or less energy despite on which task it is and how cognitive loaded it is. And you have all this in the Elevate State framework for sleep. It's all for free in this linked below this video here. So please go on and just do that and do that process, and you'll be good to go. The second thing here is that, so that was the regulation before your collapse, so you can regulate your beginning journey towards your sleep through breathing regulation, lower evening stimulation, things like that. You can have reduced emotional chaos, also reduced informational overload, and things like that. So the goal here will not be sedation, right? So the goal is, once again, the regulation. You have to be able to regulate yourself in order for you to get into the right tension and the right mode in order for your body to actually get a good night's sleep, so you can perform the day after and the day after and the day after. That is one of the biggest hidden reasons that people cannot sleep deeply, because of the internal conflict that we have been talked about, where you are living against your values, you're saying yes when you mean no, things like that. Chasing validation instead of meaning. It's a social validation or a social comparison is by far one of the most potential triggers for sleep deprivation we have, because we're such as social creatures. So if you are in the wrong social context where you do not feel safe of that you can be who you are allowed to be doing mistakes, you can have a lot of autonomy, things like that, your body will have a hard time to relax. It's not so difficult to understand that. That means also that you're trying to become someone the world approves, instead of someone that you're own biology will trust. Your nervous system always knows this. They have its innate intelligence, so that's why people often recover better where their biology is not fighting over and over again against your beliefs or your values itself. So if you want to fix the identity issue of yours, please like and subscribe and click the link below, and you will also have an early access into the sleep and recovery protocol that we have that will fix this problem for good for you. So I can't wait to see your results from following that protocol. And just leave a comment here below, just help each other out. I know that it's a lot of people that have sleep deprivation problem that really also need to feel connected with other people that have it, and also people, of course, that have had that but have done the right things to get out of that. So you can share your tip and tricks into the comment below and help each other out, okay?